Mercury. Shut up with all that racket. When you guys think of Mercury, you're going to think of 4 cars only. You're going to think of Comet, Mercury Cougar, Mercury Grand Marquis, and a Mercury Marauder. That is it. Nobody else, nothing else, no way. Even though they had a lot of old school cars back in the day, Cyclone, they had a lot of NASCAR cars. Yeah, but you guys like the AFX cars, like this 1964 Mercury Comet AFX, or you can have a 1965 Mercury Comet BFX. And they had a whole bunch of crappy cars that we always remember because they're crappy, instead of the good cars that we should remember, but we remember the crappy cars. Like this car here, the Shitty Kitty.
Lincoln Mercury introduces the totally new Lynx. Its hemispherical head
That ain't no Hemi.
Transmission and aerodynamic shape combine to produce exceptional fuel efficiency.
Operation Shitty Kitty is now in effect.
The world belongs to an American.
Fraudulent Hemi. To give you guys a brief rundown on what Mercury is to Ford, Mercury is just an intermediate car between Ford and Lincoln. Really that simple. In 1938, the model year Mercury made its debut as a namesake vehicle line as a complete new design to sizing between Ford and Lincoln. After many years after following the rise of Henry Ford II as Ford president of October 22, 1945, Ford Motor Company merged Mercury and Lincoln Motor Companies together. With that said, let's fast forward the landscape in 1967, when the Mustang sold 472,000 units that year. Now, its counterpart, the Mercury Cougar, well, it sold somewhere around 150,893 units. Now, you may look at that and say, look, that's not that great, but Trans Am series, the Mercury Cougar suffered in the beginning, but they got this thing dialed in and they started winning races. The Mercury Cougar was only built to accommodate the Mustang, not oversell the Mustang. During these times, you can sell cars if you win races, and Ford want no part of this Cougar overselling the Mustang. The 1967 Mercury Cougar base price was $2,851, only $350 more than the Ford Mustang on which it was based after. While the luxury XR7 model started at $3,081 and it accounted for 20% of the sales.
First hit of the year, he drives one, deep left field, that goes Upton, back near the wall, it's out of here!
Trust me, it wasn't 4 guys on base, but again, it was a home run. You gotta remember, Ford was selling the Mustang, so any little other crumbs is just a plus. Selling cars is just like your favorite burger joint. They make most of their money off of the daggone sodas and the goddamn extra cheese. So Ford is a cheeseburger, Lincoln is a soft drink, and Mercury is the fry and chicken nugget. So now let's fast forward to 1970 and 1971 in the Trans Am series. It had taken a major turn during this time. You had Roger Penske and Mark Donohue jumping out of the Chevy Camaro, jumping into an AMC Javelin. In 1971, they were the only factory-backed team in the field. Everybody was privateers, down to Bud Moore and his team. It's a few things that could have happened behind the scenes, but for what I've seen, this is what probably happened. First, I'm going to explain the Roger Penske deal. Now, Roger Penske was not broke. He owned a couple of Chevy dealerships. Now, he's doing deals with Chevy with this Trans Am series with this Camaro. Now, to further develop the Camaro, he needed some more money. Now, Chevy didn't want to give him no more money. They're like,
look what you got here. What? Look at this. $26,000 for one fucking dinner.
Okay, no, this could be explained.
He was pissed. Maybe he should have spoke to Carroll Shelby, because Carroll Shelby had a better way of dealing with this situation.
One of the first things we did was brought a real good young finance person from Ford in. I always want to make sure that the money is accounted for when you're spending somebody else's money, because you're always accused of stealing, and that way, if I had a Ford guy in there writing checks, I bet I never wrote 10 checks in Shelby American all the years that I was there.
Now, on top of that, Ford's racing manager disrespected Penske during a protest meeting, saying if it wasn't for Chevy building the cars, Penske would be a loser. Penske was greatly offended because he and Donohue felt that their own hard work testing and developing and spending lots of Penske's own money creating a championship race team for himself and Chevrolet. I mean, he spent a lot of money cheating and doing special little things to get his car nice and light? If you don't believe me, I'll let somebody else tell you.
Well, Penske had a trick up his sleeve. What he did is he actually changed the numbers from one car to the other. They had two cars. They would take the properly weighted car to tech. It would pass. They would come back, switch numbers, and take the same car over the scales again. They also did this in qualifying. They took both cars out on the track. This car, because it was lighter, was a second and a half faster. They'd come back into the pits. They had their pit area cordoned off so nobody could see what they were doing. They'd switch number and actually qualify the same car twice.
He didn't realize some people perceived him as some rich kid using Chevy's resources to make himself look good. So, what he did, he jumped over to AMC. For $2 million, I would do the same thing, and that's what AMC gave him for a single season. Where the heck I was going with this, I have no clue. My ADHD be really kicking in heavy, man. But let's just say this. The reason why most of the cars were in factory back because people weren't buying muscle cars at the time, but there was a certain undermined other thing that was happening too. Now, the unions were out there headhunting for the big three. Not AMC, but the big three.
The United Auto Workers met today to decide which of the big three automakers to strike. Bill Plant has the story from Detroit.
After a morning of negotiations and meetings, the Chrysler Corporation was off the hook. President Leonard Woodcock of the UAW selected the strike target with his executive board. The target is the General Motors Corporation. No one now believes that agreement is likely. The biggest stumbling block is the union's demand for a return to unlimited cost of living raises.
The negotiations go on in Detroit with little hope of averting a strike. At more than half a dozen General Motors plants in the United States and Canada, angry auto workers today jumped the gun and began striking early.
That Thursday, Lee Iacocca held a secret meeting. Dude, I wish I was at that office party. But nevertheless, that never really happened. But what really happened was they started selling some cars. GM didn't have any big boats to sell, and Ford had plenty boats to sell. And this LTD, they sold 985,000 of these things in all different types of variants. 2-door, 4-door, convertible, and the station wagon. Then in 1970, they came out with the Ford Maverick. Then a little bit after that, they came up with the Comet, which the Comet was better looking than the Maverick. Now in 1971, the Ford Pinto came out and it made a lot of money. And also they made a Mercury Bob Kitty version. Oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, ADHD moment kicked in so high. Okay, let's bring it back to the John Witt Mustang in 1968. The Mustang sold 317,500. In 1969, the Mustang sold 300,000. Now, in 1970, the Mustang sold 190,750. And with those sales numbers in 1970, now you can see why they pulled out of the Trans Am series. It really didn't make any sense. It didn't get a good return on their investment. Now, this Cougar here, a lot of people don't speak about this Cougar, but this Cougar is magnificent. It's slightly longer than the Mustang, of course. You can see that it looks like it, but this is a work of art. This car can take wire wheels on it and it looks mean. It can take mag wheels and look mean. It can take regular wheels and look mean. Mercury is just a step before you get into a Lincoln, correct? Now, this Mercury Cougar is so slick, it could have been called a Lincoln. This could have been the first Mark series. That's what I mean by this. I mean, the way it just didn't fit just being a Cougar, this thing here. It's a sports luxury sedan, so it fits right in the genre of Lincoln to me. Now think of the Lincoln Mark 8. Now that one is a slick behind car. Many of you guys love that car. And why do you love this car? It's huge, and it's very aerodynamic. Plus it has a double overhead cam and all of this stuff in here. This thing here had the Eliminator package and it was just as slick for the times. So this is a Mercury Mark 8. That's what they should have called this thing, man. Or, you know, even though they had the XR7, you know what I mean? Man, just call this goddamn thing a Lincoln and call it a day. The car was just fantastic. I'm sold on it. Don't get me wrong. The first version is what everybody wants because of the race history. That's why racing back in those days really mattered, because they give you a visual picture of what the car can be when you hook it all up. See, they ain't race with this one here. Well, I was wrong. They did race the car, but it wasn't really a popular series, some kind of NASCAR type thing. But there's all the paperwork on the screen. You could check it out for yourself, and you can see that right there, the Japanese guy drove it, and trust me, it didn't help the sales of the thing. Nobody was buying muscle cars at the time. So now in 1968, the Cougar sold 113,720. Now in 1969, the Cougar sold 100,069. Now in 1970, the Cougar sold 72,343. As you see, they couldn't sell a Mustang, and if you can't sell a Mustang, you ain't selling no Cougar. And then what they did, big Mustang, and if they didn't sell none of these, they really didn't sell the other big giant Cougar. But plain Jane Mustang, no good. You gotta get the Mach. The Mach is where it's at in 1971 for Mustangs. That is it. Now, I'm going to say something. The plain Jane Cougar is better looking than the plain Jane Mustang. Hands down. The Mustang sets a certain precedence. Mustang's supposed to look like a Mustang, you know, the whole muscle thing to it. See, the Cougar has no rules. The Cougar just has to look cool, and they do a good job. Mercury, they knew what they were doing and design a cooler looking Mustang, hands down. I never seen one of these on the road. I'm being honest with you. I never seen one, and I'm sure they didn't sell that many of these cars either. But these cars, man, they just missed the boat, man. And you know why they didn't sell any of these cars? Well, back in the day, Ford knew how to set up a theatrical introduction of a new car. They get some lights, some dancers, and a goddamn mothership coming down on the ground like it was some P-Funk George Clinton concert. And this was all for a Ford Pinto. Now, this thing here desecrated everything as far as sales, made them a lot of money, and also they paid out a lot of money. Ford come up with some great ideas. Now, they took a Mustang, a Ford Pinto, and a Maverick and created the Sprint package. Who does this? This was the equivalent of someone taking your favorite pastry and sprinkling shit on top of it. It's like, I'm not gonna eat this, but you're trying to sell me this shit, huh? Mercury guys and Ford guys wasn't going for it because we like our Cougars like this so we can go racing. Then you make them like this and then we can go racing. And you can make them like this and then we go racing. And then you make it like this. G-Wagon? Really? This design was cocaine induced, for sure.
I think you're all in the head.
Thank you guys for watching this episode of Build Something TV, man. Hope you guys were enlightened. This video has been too long, so I'm gonna cut this thing short, man, and leave you with a little bit of racing. So I'll see you guys on the next video, man. Later.
People who were able to go the extra lap to win the race, miraculously, while everyone else had to stop for a splash of fuel. There were people who I think were involved in a racing accident maybe after '72, and the crew chief jumped over the wall and started picking up the tail lights. He only picked up the tail lights. He left the rest of the shrapnel all over the track, but he picked up the tail lights and quickly spirited those back into his locker. And what could possibly have been in those taillights to make them so incredibly important?